Welcome to a crossover episode with Ralph Vieira and Ken Mills. It's Cheap Talk meeting Cheap Trick Tube.
Hey, how you doing there? Hello there.
Welcome to Cheap Talk, and I'm glad to be here on Cheap Trick Tube.
Hello, how are you?
Hello there, ladies
I
and gentlemen.
dreamed of you last night.
Ladies and gentlemen, on the other end of the line is the one, the only, my personal doctor, Dr. Fuck, Ralph Vieira.
Thank you very much. Cure the sane. That's what I say.
That's right. We need all the help we can get.
That's right. Enough of this normal. Everybody needs to be insane.
That's right. So you and I are friends, and we both love a lot of the same kind of music, and one of the things that we both love is Cheap Trick.
Oh, yes. We are very much big Cheap Trick fans, and I am a faithful listener at Cheap Trick Chat Trick Juice, whatever.
I've just started calling it Cheap Talk.
You know, I gotta be honest with you, Ken, and I do actually mention you guys a lot. If you haven't noticed in my reviews,
I do.
Part of my getting ready for one of my reviews, I do three things. I read Fragile, Reputation of a Fragile Thing, but I can only go up to Busted or Lap of Luxury up to that one. Mm-hmm. The Great Still Competition from Robert Lawson, and then when I'm done reading that parts of the show, I go on to Cheap Chat and I search for that album, I'm looking for. And then I'll listen to that full episode and bam, right into my review. So got a combination of a bunch of Cheap Trick heads, and I throw it all into my reviews with really killer visuals.
Yes, and for those of you who have never seen Ralph Vieira's Cheap Trick Tube on YouTube, it's free. And it's full of Cheap Trick, and it's really well done.
Well, thank you, Ken. And also, it's not just reviews. I put up I just saw Cheap Trick last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago. And want to give a shout out to my buddy that I can't remember his name, damn it. But anyway, he got me all the way to third row. And then at the end, I got to front row. And I filmed about 50 minutes of it, and you can see it on Cheap Trick Tube now. And it's a great set list,
Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun, and it was cool for your friend to get you up there. I actually watched that as well.
Oh, you saw the show?
And I saw your show about it.
Oh, okay. Well, now, I did a little review of the show, but now you can see the 50 minutes plus of the show that I put on.
Yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. So, Cheap Talk fans, get over there and check it out. There will be links in our show notes as well. Now, I want to talk a little bit about your personal Cheap Trick history.
Ken, it is the most bizarre story you'll ever hear about anybody who got into Cheap Trick. It's really strange. It was 1978, or maybe it was 77, one of the 2 years, I'm a little foggy. A friend of mine, remember Columbia House?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So a friend of mine was on Columbia House, so he can get a free record or something if he gets people to join. So he got me to join. So I wasn't the biggest music fan back then. I liked Kiss. I was just like into Kiss, and I liked ELO and Kansas. That's about it. And Black Sabbath. So he, I was looking through a list for him to put bands on there. So he did, but there was one I couldn't figure out. I didn't know what to put, and he randomly put Cheap Trick, and he didn't even tell me this. So when the cassettes came in, I got a cassette of In Color. And when I saw the cover, I thought, what is this, like the Beach Boys? Because it didn't have the back cover on the cassette, just the front cover. I never bothered to listen to that cassette, ever. And then my friend, who's still my good friend today, came over to my house, and we were going to tape, I forgot what show, on King Biscuit Flower Hour, an old radio show that would have concerts. And I didn't have a cassette, so I said, let me get this. I was going to tape over In Color, because I didn't know, I just didn't give a chance. And he goes, dude, put it on. Let's hear this. And I was like, all right. And when I put it on, and that riff, the Hello There, came on, we both looked at each other and our jaws dropped. And that's how I discovered Cheap Trick. That was before Budokan. And, I never saw them on Don Kirshner at the time. They were on. But that's how I got into Cheap Trick. Is that the most bizarre way to get into a band?
It absolutely is, and it shows how important a visual thing is. I mean, you were turned off by the cover in a way.
Yeah, yeah, because I thought it was like, Simon and Garfunkel, or now in my ripe old age, I love all that stuff. But back then, I was like, oh, I don't like the Beach Boys. I don't like Simon. I thought that's what it was going to sound like because that's what that cover looks like. It looks like two guys sitting playing acoustic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it might as well be the Nelsons. Nothing against them.
No, no, no. And they were very. Gunnar was very nice at the Rock and Pie. You
Oh,
met him, right?
great guy, great
Oh,
guy.
awesome.
But you know what I mean? It just looks like two good-looking guys on motorcycles. I'm not sure what message that conveys, right?
Yeah.
Who knows?
If I would have saw Rick and Bun on that cassette, the back cover, I might have listened to it going, what the hell? All right, let me hear this. But just seeing, because the cassette didn't bring the back cover.
Right,
So
right.
there you go. And I became fanatical when I heard that cassette, that I ran out and bought Heaven Tonight, and then soon after the first album. Then my friend's brother, Ronnie Hicks, had import of Budokan before it was in the U.S. And that floored me too. And then, we all know history after that. When it was released here, I Want You to Want Me blew them up. But I knew them before all that stuff. When did you discover them, Ken?
Well, it was probably because of the Kiss connection, right? I mean,
opening for Kiss, yeah.
well, even a little bit before that, it was talking about. I think Gene Simmons mentioned them in a magazine, and I went, "Oh, I need to check these guys out." And then, before I could really explore them, I went over to a woman's house named Karen, and she was asked me to babysit her kids, and she was dating my uncle. And she handed me the first Cheap Trick record. She said, "I know how much you love the Beatles. These are like the hard Beatles. You should check them out." And it floored me. Just absolutely floored me. It was all the dark stuff that I loved about Alice Cooper, all the great harmonies and riffs of the Beatles, but some of that attitude of Kiss, and who knew what else was all in that stew, right?
You remember what year that was?
I think it was just before In Color came out.
Oh, wow. You knew him before me.
Well, it was only because of Karen, because she was cool, right? I had a little crush on her. Actually, it was kind of a big crush. It was, but yeah, I had a crush on her, and she was cool. If my uncle was dating her, she was cool, and she was somehow or another she got a hold of the record, and it just floored me. And I remember being freaked out by the side 1 side A thing.
Yeah. And for years, I always thought Hot Love was the opening track till the CD came out.
Mm-hmm.
But
either
side is a great opener.
It really is a perfect album.
But Hello Kitties, it's logical that should be the first side. But I was a dumb kid.
Mm-hmm. It was so weird, and you must recognize this, how it went from like Cheap Trick was this weird underground band, then they became like big amongst the jocks and cheerleaders and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was strange to see that evolution happen. And then it was even weirder by the time we get to All Shook Up. Cheap Trick is in 16 Magazine and Tiger Beat. And
right.
If you listen to that first album, there's songs about Richard Speck and
child molesters.
Poisoning people. Just so much weirdness, so much darkness on that first album.
A hurricane of darkness, and in the middle of that hurricane, in the eye, is the beautiful Manicello.
Oh my God. One of the best songs of all time.
Oh, agreed completely. Look, I'm not one to be like, caring about like what, the masses like, but when it comes to Cheap Trick is an exception. This band should not be opening for anybody. They should be playing arenas. They should be at the same level of Dream Police and All Shook Up today. And it really does baffle me how they are so underrated, but so loved by us, because they do have a fanatical fan base, which is good. They deserve it. But I think, they should be as big as a Kiss or or anybody that's still because they are a legendary band. They are a band that's been around, a band that I saw in a little tiny club during the Doctor in Hialeah, Florida, where it just goes to show this band is a real band. They don't give up. It's like most bands. All right, we're headline arenas, then we plummet to little clubs. Okay, let's call it a day. Not them, and you gotta love them for that.
Yeah. So I have a weird theory as to why they're not bigger.
Why is that?
They didn't break up.
Oh, you think that would have done it?
Well, when you think about it, they missed the entire reunion phenomenon. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because even though Bun had left for a while, it was like they were always there. And I think that it's kind of like being the nice guy in high school. A lot of people try to take advantage of you or don't really realize what they got in you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's how they wound up opening for like bands like Poison back in the day, right? When it should have been the other way around.
Of course. Poison became huge through a Cheap Trick song, She's Tight.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, it's the same riff, but and I'm sure that they would admit it because they're Cheap Trick fans too. So,
I may not be the biggest Poison fan. In fact, I don't like them at all. But I do respect them for at least acknowledging that Cheap Trick is a band worthy to take out on the road with them. So I'll give them that.
Absolutely. So, do you think I'm like talking out my hind end on this one, or do you think there's any truth to that?
I don't know, Ken. Maybe, but at the same time, it's like, all right. Let me ask you a question. At what timeline would you say they break up?
I would say probably the Doctor.
You see, I would disagree. I would say if they broke up during All Shook Up when they were still a high-level band, a high-profile band, because by the Doctor, they were just getting less and less and less popular.
Right.
But at the same time, I love you, Ken, even if we disagree.
Well, it's just thoughts and opinions.
Yeah,
never be afraid of thoughts and opinions.
A lot of people can take it personal. That's what I love about you. You don't take it personal.
No. One of the things that, like, I've always thought it was kind of interesting how their career starts off in the same way like Kiss does, where you have 3 albums that go virtually unrecognized, and then that third live album hits, and then boom.
And another parallel is Kiss was huge in Detroit during those years, and Cheap Trick was huge in Japan. So they did have a following in some little area of the world, and then it blew up with a live album.
And then their most polished work, really, at the time, was Dream Police, and Kiss's most polished work was Destroyer, right?
Oh, there. I didn't see that parallel. There, I agree with you.
Yeah, and then at some point, they almost lost Tom Peterson about the same time that they did Peter Criss, so it was just a weird thing. And it's just strange, but like, I sometimes wonder if bands, they say it's better to burn out than fade away, right? But like, you have to wonder what kind of impact. Like, just imagine if we would have had, Cheap Trick, In Color, Heaven Tonight, Budokan, All Shook Up, Found All the Parts, and then boom, they just disappeared for a while.
I think the reunion would have been huge.
Yeah, because then it'd be. To me, those albums are legendary. Don't anyone listening, don't misconstrue our surmising and speculating for lack of love, because I think those first 3 albums are just untouchable. And now let me run you down on this. We know that Cheap Trick has always been kind of unhappy with In Color.
Yes.
I know you have heard the In Color re-records.
Not a fan, Ken. I don't know what you feel about it. I do love Clock Strikes 10 on there. That's about it. I like that version. I think it's really good.
Well, for those who have never heard it, it's weird because in a lot of ways they make the same mistakes that they claim are on the first version of In Color, right? like they don't really change I Want You to Want Me all that much. As a matter of fact, they even put a part that has like a flute or something on it, clarinet.
Yeah, you're right. That's right. I haven't heard that in so long because I don't really visit that one. Though it's on my iPod Shuffle and Clock Strikes 10 came on, like, I don't know, like maybe 6 months ago, and I was like, wow, this is really good. You know?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not a fan of Steve Albini, you know?
Yeah, he seems to be a love or hate kind of a guy.
Yeah,
Like there's a lot of people that really don't like his work.
yeah, you know, because I'm not the biggest Nirvana fan, but I really liked Nevermind. And then when he did the next album, I was like, oh, it's the sound of that album was like, I don't know, it sounded so muddy and stuff. And I feel the same way about In Color, but at the same time, you may answer this for me, Ken, because I'm not sure. Was that album ever mastered?
You're talking about the re-records?
Yes.
As far as I'm concerned, or anything I've ever heard, no.
Because I think that may be a big problem with it too, because it does sound muddy.
Yeah, well, it's similar to the same kind of history that Kiss had with Carnival of Souls, right? Like
Yes.
that album, I don't feel was ever delivered the way it should have been.
As I said, oh, I'm sorry about that.
Don't worry.
I think that the problem with Carnival of Souls we have to talk Kiss. I mean, it's part of our DNA. I think the reunion ruined it. Gina Paul just gave up on it and threw it on Toby and Bruce's shoulders. And I feel there's a lot of good songs on there, and there's a lot of songs that could have been so much better if they took a little more time on it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And but you know, In Color, to me, maybe it's because of, you know, the timeline and my first Cheap Trick experience. It's so good.
It is
so good. It's so perfect. I am not a fan of I Want You to Want Me. I'll be I love the Budokan version. And you know, it may be a burnt out song, and no matter how many times I've heard that song, it always gets my foot tapping live. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's such a feel good tune, you know?
I honestly believe that those songs have earned their reputation. They've earned their love, right? Like I never understand. Like if you go see Quiet Riot, why wouldn't you want to hear one of their hits? If you go see Van Halen, why wouldn't you want to hear one of their hits? And I'm a big deep set list guy. But having said that, anytime I hear Surrender, I'm fucking horns up and loving it. You know what I'm saying? It's like the first time.
Surrender is the perfect song too. It's just perfect.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
It absolutely is. Let me ask you this question.
Well, I'm sorry to cut you off, just real quick. What you just said, you're a deep track fan.
Right.
There's no better band to go see than Cheap Trick if you're a deep track fan. Because they throw out so many deep tracks and they don't stick to the same set list, you know?
That's true.
So go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead. What was the question?
Do you like banjo music? No. Now, a lot of people may not know this, but you are a songwriter as well. I've written a few songs. Whether anyone wants to hear them or not, that's debatable. But one of the most interesting things that I personally love about the song Surrender is that it does not rhyme.
Yeah, you're right. And I think it was in one of the books that it finally dawned on me. I go, hey, you know, that's right. And yet it fits so well.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing when people, you almost have to walk people through it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You almost have to like, no, check it out. No, I know you've heard it, but now let's go through the words. And then people, like, it dawns on them. It's like, holy crap.
It influenced two songs I've recorded, actually. I
really
made Seven Doors of Death and some of this song called Sweet Trash. I did some lines that didn't rhyme, but it was hard, Ken. It was really hard to make a song not rhyme and still make it work. You know what I mean? But still, I mean, as much as I love those two songs, Surrender's way better.
Yeah, absolutely. But so, you know, we talk about the first three albums as like gold, as in untouchable, right? Mm-hmm. What did you think once you got past the Budokan era?
Well,
and then Dream Police dropped. How did that hit you?
You know, I have a very hard time when it comes to Cheap Trick picking a favorite. And sometimes Dream Police is my favorite. I think Dream Police is a perfect album. I love everything about that album, and Way of the World is probably my favorite song. Along with On Top of the World, and I absolutely love that album. I love what Ted Templeman did, and it's not only Cheap Trick, but a lot of bands have a problem with that guy. But
Right.
I thought that guy was a genius, what he did with that album and what he did on Heaven Tonight. And to a lesser extent In Color, even though I love In Color, but In Color doesn't have the kitchen sink stuff that those other two albums had.
Right.
With all the orchestra stuff, but it's still a great album. But I just think that guy is amazing. And I don't know if you know this, Ken. You probably did. You probably interviewed him, didn't you?
Which one?
Ted Templeman.
No, not yet.
Okay, well, no, wait, it's not Ted. Ted Templeman's the one that produced those albums.
Tom Werman.
Damn, what a brain fart I just had.
These things happen.
Yeah, well, you interviewed him.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think I heard it on your show. He said that he liked using the worst track for second to last. You know that, which is bizarre. Stiff Competition. What's the other one? I Know What I Want, which I'm sick of live, by the way. And what's the second to last song on In Color? Is Come On, Come On, isn't it?
Let me check.
I believe it's Come On, Come On. Those are all jams.
Great stuff. You cannot beat it. Yeah, Come On, Come On is the second to the last song. So Good to See You.
Such a great song.
Yeah.
But
Excellent stuff.
I love Dream Police, and to me, it's just a perfect album. And sometimes I have a hard time between that, Heaven Tonight, and the first album. Not to say nothing away from In Color, because In Color is my first love, and I give In Color a perfect 10. But it's the I Want You to Want Me version. I think it just degrades it a little more than the other albums that I love every single track on.
Very good. Now, why should someone who's a Cheap Trick fan, and this is a silly question, but we have to ask it, why should someone who's a Cheap Trick fan watch your channel on YouTube, Cheap Trick Tube?
Because it's a lifelong fan. I mean, you will see, and a lot of people will disagree with me, because I kind of fell off the map on Cheap Trick after All Shook Up, and I'm not very favorable in my review to those albums, even though there are tracks, especially on Next Musician Please, I really do like. But between that and I'm not going to give. I think I'm up to Lap of Luxury now, because just to let everybody know, I have every review done up to Rockford, but I put up one a month, and I have them all scheduled for the first Friday of each month. And I'm not very favorable during that time, but boy, I get back on track, on later albums, and some albums that are not very liked. An album that I heard on Cheap Talk that was not very liked. I'm a big fan of, but that
you want to tell us which one that is? Oh, it hasn't come up yet.
No, it hasn't come up yet. So yeah.
I think I know which one it is, but I'm not gonna tip the hat.
Yeah. I even had a little discussion on your Facebook page about it.
Excellent.
When I was like, well, how can you guys not like this particular song? And I say about 98% of the people on that page was like, cause it sucks. But there was one guy who was like, nah, I'm with Ralph. I was like, yay, I got one person,
Now, it's weird because it seems like there's just certain albums that have a reputation amongst fans. And you take a look at Cheap Trick 97. What is it about that album that stands out to you?
I think that album, I don't think, what really I mean, first of all, the music, and I already have that one up, so I praise it a lot. I think that album lacks of record company pressure.
Right.
And I felt like they were free to do what they want without second guessing, because every album before it, I mean, Woke Up With a Monster is a damn great album. But I hear a little record company pressure, like, what's that Pony song? Ride the Pony. And there's another one, Something Every Minute. That sounds kind of like a record company, where this one was just unadulterated Cheap Trick, pure Cheap Trick, and Rick back to his insane 8 Miles Low type little bizarreness that I haven't heard in any Cheap Trick album since All Shook Up, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. It was some of that manic craziness.
Yeah.
That actually is in the song "Woke Up with a Monster."
Yeah,
it's weird because the table is kind of being set on "Woke Up with a Monster" a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of like a stepping stone. I mean,
exactly.
They had to do "Wake Up with a Monster" to get to '97.
Exactly.
Beautiful, beautiful album.
And it's the lyrics are just amazing on that album. If you're going through a divorce, you want to listen to Cheap Trick '97.
I never been there, Ken.
It'll put you through all the changes, brother.
I hear you.
You got me up in my feelings. You put me through my changes. So let me ask you this. If someone has never listened to one of your listeners on Cheap Talk Tube, since you're putting this up there, or Cheap Trick Tube, sorry, one of your listeners on Cheap Trick Tube that's never listened to the Cheap Talk podcast, what would you tell them?
Well, I'd say they're missing out, because if you love Cheap Trick, you get to hear, because what you guys do, and by the way, I'll say this after this. What you guys do is a roundtable type thing. And while doing my research for Rockford, you inspired me to bring back the Vieira Vault podcast, because I pretty much abandoned it, because my Vieira Vault podcast was just me. I wanted to be different than every podcast. But to be different in every podcast, you have to think of something different every show. And it was just too difficult for me. Then I thought, I want to start doing roundtable stuff. And I'll bring it back. And I already hit you up for that. And I hit up BJ, because I would like to have you, BJ, and Robert on to talk Cheap Trick, because I just love the discussions and the different point of views,
Right.
And
the only thing is we got to be careful, because with that much hot air in one area, it's fucking Hindenburg 2019.
Yeah, I hear that. We're sexy as hell.
That's blowing it up for sure. So, what's some of your favorite reaction that you've got from Cheap Trick Tube?
Well, my favorite overall, and man, okay, I remembered his name. Charlie Hill. He's the guy that got me all the way up front.
Wait a second. You mean the Charlie Hill? The guy that got you up front?
Yeah, that's who got me up front.
Yeah.
Charlie Hill became a Cheap Trick fan because of me. And to me, that is the greatest thing that you can accomplish. It's to get somebody that, all I know is the hits and whatever, to get them to, I'm telling you, Ken, the guy was mouthing every damn song they played. Hot Love, the deep tracks. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's the greatest compliment, is to turn somebody on to, especially a band like Cheap Trick. Mm-hmm. So I would say Charlie Hill is probably my favorite. But, there's a lot of other people that I have turned on to Cheap Trick. But I never was at a concert with them and seen them mouth the words. So I don't know if they're as fanatical as they are. Because Charlie Hill, paid the big money to get up front,
And he pulled you up there, too.
And he got me, because he was there with his girlfriend. And he said, look, I'm going to walk out. There's a couple empty seats here. I'm going to walk out with my girlfriend's ticket. Then you walk in with her ticket, and you can sit with us. And that's how, so yeah, that would be my favorite. And I'm sure you've done that as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Some of the best responses that we've heard are from people who kind of felt like they were all alone. Even though the internet's a big place and, the world's a big place and everything, but there's a lot of people that they really literally have no one to talk to Cheap Trick about.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I found, that I don't care if it's Kiss or the Monkees or whatever we're talking about. Somebody out there goes, somebody is as big into this as I am. Someone cares as much as I do. And it stops the conversation in the world from being me and I to us and we. You know what I'm saying? And there's something cool about that, because you're not alone. And you will find a lot of love on Cheap Trick Tube and a lot of love here on Cheap Talk. And, the one thing that's difficult, though, I'll say this much, is that a lot of Cheap Trick fans don't understand why we we'll cut off certain discussions and stuff on the Facebook page, for example, or why we won't go into certain areas of certain things. And that's because Cheap Trick has always been such an incredibly private band. There's a lot of bands that are not as protective of their personal life and stuff like that. But those guys took the time to develop like multiple stories back in the day that, like, for example, Bunny was from Venezuela, right? So.
Right. And Rick was related to the guy from the Bowery Boys.
Exactly. So it was just a little bunch of things to like throw you off the scent if you were really trying to figure out who they were. And it was a little bit of fun, but I think that there was also a bit of a thing that they wanted their personal lives to be respected. And I think that sometimes there's a lot of fans, like, for example, some fans will want to talk about someone's ex-wife or someone's current wife or something like that. We try to shut that stuff down because we're not here to play Peyton Place or Days of Our Lives. We're here to talk about Cheap Trick, right?
Mm-hmm. You're right. You're 100% right. And I don't go that route. I do go that route with Kiss, but I know, you know, and I'll tell you this off the air. I have a little bit because, you know, Xander lives in Florida, but I would never ever repeat what I heard. You know?
Why would you?
Exactly. There's no reason to, because Xander has given me none but pleasure. He's never lied to me.
Exactly.
You know, other than, you know, like the blatant lies of, you know, joking around in interviews. I love the one interview they interviewed all four and they asked them what's their favorite song, and Bunny said "Kiss Me Red."
Yeah, that was a trip. So what's your least favorite Cheap Trick album, or would that be spoilers for the Cheap Trick 2?
No, because I already reviewed it, and
okay.
Oh, am I gonna get shit for this? My least favorite, and no, it's not The Doctor. It's Standing on the Edge.
Really? Now, what is it about Standing on the Edge?
I can't find a song I like on there.
Not one.
Not one. There's something about that album that just doesn't hit me. And believe me, when I do my reviews, I spend a whole month listening to it at least once a day, so it can really sink in. And The Doctor was another one I just didn't like. And I listened to it for a full month, and I was pleasantly surprised by quite a few tracks on there that were pretty damn good, you know? But, you know, it's like also word of mouth, kind of like, I gotta be honest with you, that kind of, I'm guilty of word of mouth, you know, because
everyone is.
I bought The Doctor for $3 the year it was released in some record store, short-lived record store here. And I brought it home, I played it once, and I was like, ugh, you know, that... This ain't for me. So I never revisited it until I started doing the review. And then I was so surprised. Some of those songs are really good, you know? And some are just out there, you know?
Well, I'll do a dangerous take here, but I think that Standing on the Edge is not far from the great songs per crap songs ratio of The Doctor. It's not that far off.
Okay. So you're a fan?
Well, I like Standing on the Edge. One thing I didn't like was the cover. I'll give you that much.
Yeah.
It just seems so confusing.
Yeah, you can only make out Xander on it.
Barely that. You know what I mean?
Tonight It's You is okay, you know?
Yeah. Well, Little Sister, Tonight It's You, Love Comes, Standing on the Edge itself is good. This Time Around I like, but not everything's great on it, you know what I mean? Like Rock All Night seems like a B-side, right?
It sounds like a Poison song. You know, one of those big rock tunes from the 80s.
Yeah.
Total record company pressure.
Yeah, well, let me put it this way. Rock All Night, Cover Girl, and Wild Wild Women could all be B-sides.
Right. Yeah, to me that whole album sounds like a B-side. But that, you know, and I do get, you know, some guff, which I understand to an extent. But, you know, it's all personal opinion. I mean, in the end, look, I may be off a couple numbers, Ken, but I believe the last time I saw Cheap Trick was my 100th time.
Wow.
I
Amazing.
have not missed a Cheap Trick show since 1979, except for when they opened for Def Leppard and Poison. But other than that, oh yeah, and there was another one that I was going to a Cheap Trick show, and I got God, what's it called now? The Rocks. attack kidney stones.
Mm.
The day of, earlier in the day, so I ended up in the hospital. So those are the only 2 times I missed Cheap Trick in the whole. And Cheap Trick comes to South Florida a lot. I mean, a lot, several times a year. And I'm always there. And I went to the Standing on the Edge tour, the Doctor tour. I mean, I never missed them because I love them.
Right. Right.
So if I am a little discouraged on some, it doesn't take away my fandom, But if I'm going to review something, I got to be honest. I'm not going to sit there and say it's great if I don't think it's great.
Well, let me ask you this. If I were to give you a project, I'm not doing this, but just something to, we'll ask the listeners and the viewers. If you were to put together an album of the best tracks from The Doctor and Standing on the Edge, what 10 songs would it be?
Well, Ken, I don't have the albums in front of me.
Right. All right. Well, here, I'll tell you what.
Okay,
I'm going to read them off, and we'll do this right now. Hold on a second. Let me make sure I get everything open in front of us. We're doing this live, folks, right?
Yeah.
These things happen.
And I am kind of old, Ken, so my memory is a little shot, so I might forget a song is good, but the ones that real stand out, I will remember.
Absolutely. Okay. So the first track on Standing on the Edge and The Doctor, they're both Little Sister and It's Up to You.
Love It's Up to You. I'm not a fan of Little Sister.
All right. So you would not include Little Sister on it.
I'll tell you this right now. The only song I'll include on there is Tonight It's You and Love Comes. You reminded me of that song. I was like, oh yeah, I like that one too.
Yeah, that's a good one. I would take Little Sister, Tonight It's You, Love Comes, Standing on the Edge, and This Time Around, and bop them over to The Doctor. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, Ken, mine's going to be an EP.
Yeah, I just counted up to 5. Everyone should be proud of me. Yeah. Sesame Street did pay off. So, and then if you were from an older age, it would be Hooked on Phonics. So here we go. As far as songs that I would drop off The Doctor, I would actually keep It's Up to You if they would change some of it, just a tiny bit.
What,
right?
like the keyboardy parts?
Yeah, I can handle some of it, but
right.
But yeah, I would chuck probably 4 or 5 songs off The Doctor and replace them. I could make a really nice mix. So if you're out there, let Ralph know on YouTube what your 10-song collection. Let's see, would it be Doctor on the Edge or Standing on the Doctor? Which should it be? I kind of like Doctor on the Edge because
the Standing Doctor.
Standing Doctor.
The Standing Doctor on the Edge.
Yeah. So whatever you want to call it, let us know your top, your mix of Standing on the Doctor or Doctor on the Edge or Standing Doctor or Doctor Standing on the Edge. There you go. It could be that too.
And let me tell you, man, a lot of people on the Cheap Trick Tube love those albums. So, I did get a lot of negative comments of how much they love the album, those 2 albums.
It's weird though, man. You talk about show prep, right? I encourage everybody, do your own show prep, even if you don't have a show, because it really does open up these albums to you in a way that you normally don't do when you're just listening to them. You know what I mean?
Right.
You really immerse yourself in it, and it's great. But yeah, so what do you want to do with Cheap Trick Tube that you haven't done yet?
Well, I want to, when I'm done with all the reviews, I want to tackle the Bunny Carlos, what are those discs he put out?
The Bunny's Basement?
Yeah, I want to tackle that. I want to tackle the box set. I want to tackle, some of the live albums, some of the B-sides, the Robin Sanders solo albums. I just want to go through everything they released that I own. And I also like to do like an episode of songs that should have been on albums, because they have a lot of great B-side stuff.
Mm-hmm.
that and soundtrack stuff that's really good that they're not too proud of. Up the Creek is one of them. I love that song. Rick hates it.
I love that track. It's dumb, but it's fun.
It's fun. It's a fun tune.
Yeah. I've actually made a thing called Cheap Trick Goes to the Movies or Cheap Trick at the Movies. I've made like this compilation like 7 times in my life.
Oh wow. Spring
I've
Break
made different. Oh, of course.
Yeah, I like that one.
It's got to be on there whether I want it or not. You know what I mean? It was just like a place for all the bastard songs.
Through the Night is another awesome one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's not a movie song, but it's a piece of it.
Mm-hmm. But it would fit. So it fits. And of course it's got Reach Out and You Must Be Dreaming, right? What do you think of those 2 tracks?
I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of I Must Be Dreaming and Reach Out. I really love the Chicago Fest version of it.
Yeah, that's a really good version.
I mean, I love the vocal deliverance, but shit, I say this in all my reviews. I don't like this song, but Robin's great on it. Robin's great on everything, you know?
Right.
And I love his vocal performance on Reach Out, the studio version. But I love how Rick does it, with the guitar live. I think that version to me is the definitive version of that song,
Mm-hmm.
But I dig it as a song. I just can do without the keyboarding, studio version.
Right. But let me ask you a question. I know that for me, as excited as I was about heavy metal, the movie, the magazine, everything, and the potential of a heavy metal soundtrack at the time, it just infinitely became cooler because Cheap Trick was going to be involved.
Yes. That's why I bought the album.
Same here. Absolutely. Same here. I almost wish that they would have saved, I'm actually surprised that the song didn't wind up on One, Reach Out.
Yeah, it matches the album perfectly.
It does, 100%. I never understood that.
I Want Be Man off. I don't know if you like that one, but
it's got its place, just not in heavy rotation, right?
I don't think it fits the album, the vibe of the album. And I don't really hate that song. To me, it's kind of a High Priest of Rhythmic Noise Part 2.
Right. Now, we did a crossover before we did an episode of the Rock and Metal Combat podcast, where we talked about All Shook Up. So we want to encourage people to check that out as well.
Episode.
Yeah, it was really good. And you actually challenged me to rethink some of my thoughts on side 2 of All Shook Up.
Oh yeah, I wasn't too fond of the last maybe the last 2 tracks. I mean, I didn't mind I Love You. No. Use Your Imagination. I kind of like that song a lot now. But I think by the time we recorded that, I wasn't really on board with that tune. But I don't feel it's as strong as all the material up to Love Comes Tumbling Down. I Love You Honey is, it's not bad, but it's just not as good as everything that came before it, on that album.
I know that Love Comes Tumbling Down has a huge importance in your life, and some people may not know what the song is even about. You want to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, it's about Bon Scott, and there's a glaring example of it when he says it wasn't Johnny Be Good, but it sounded so great that night. And it's because Angus and Bon joined them on stage and they did Johnny Be Good. And you hear little references. They say Highway to Hell in it, and a couple other little things. And it's just so cool how they were like tour mates. There's that infamous picture of them playing pool with Bon. And I'm a huge fan of Bon Scott. I was gutted when I was in junior high finding out he died. I was really on board with Bon Scott at the time. But I didn't get that song was about Bon Scott until many years later. I believe it was Reputation is a Fragile Thing. Educated me on that. I was like, oh wow, and it's such a great spoken word on that song in the middle. It's just a phenomenal tune.
Speaking of spoken word parts that mean a lot, I've had some health issues over the last couple of years, and I've lost a ton of weight, and I'm being reinvigorated, just coming back, right?
That's awesome. I'm very proud of you, Ken.
Well, thank you, but uh, the one part in High Priest of Rhythmic Noise where he talks about I'm learning to live again with the power of music.
Yeah.
That is just every once in a while I'll just post that on Facebook and people don't even know what it's all about. But
Hmm.
it's true, music is such a beautiful and powerful thing. And I want to take a second because we're going to wrap things up here soon, but we're going to do like a lightning round where you're going to give me your top threes of some things. Okay. Just,
Okay.
we're just going to put you on the spot, but I want to thank you for being my friend. And
Well, likewise, my
when,
friend.
when I was, when I before I got into the hospital and when I came out of the hospital, especially, you would call me about once a week to check up on me.
Right.
And I tell people that you're my doctor, and they don't believe me, but you put a smile on my face when I couldn't find one. And I just want to go on record as thanking you for that because I see your heart, and I know you're probably gonna get mad at me for talking good about you. You know, some people have a reputation when if you talk bad about them, it's a good thing. You got a reputation that if you talk good about you, it might ruin your rep, right? So,
No, you could say everything nice about me. When they see a couple of those featured Cheap Trick reviews, they'll go back to hating me.
oh, okay. You are Dr. Fuck after all.
Exactly.
So, if you were to cover one Cheap Trick song on an album, what would it be?
Easy answer, and I will cover it. Take Me, I'm Yours.
Ah, there
I
you go.
absolutely love that song, and it's a song I think I can nail. I'm not. I'm a thrash vocalist. I'm not a
Kind of
Disney
like
singer.
Ian's mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. See, I've been very Disney this whole episode. Look at you. But yeah, Robin Zander, and I mean, if you're not aware, I've done a couple Kiss songs, spoofy things. I can't sing that good. I can't even sing as good as Gene, and I sound terrible doing it. But I do it, on purpose. And people, are, man, your vocals suck. I'm not a good singer, but I'm a great thrash singer. I
There
can
you
do the
go.
thrash. A lot of people love my band. If Thrash or Die on Facebook has 150,000 people, and we sell a lot of records. And it's more of a outside of the U.S. continent type thing. Toward Europe and out, Costa Rica, Colombia, Puerto Rico. Well, Puerto Rico's America, but anyway. So and we have a good fan base where I as I as I know, there's 6 people with Thrash or Die tattoos that I've
Right.
seen.
Well,
And
it's
go ahead.
also a very rabid fan base. I mean,
Yes, it's
and
outside of the U.S.
it's weird you were talking about Cheap Trick earlier having, fans in Japan. Some of those shows you play like down South America, it's like you're the biggest band in the world.
Our last show there was in front of 8,000 people headlining
Yeah, it's
Colombia. You can
amazing.
see it on YouTube. It's insane.
It is. It
It's
is.
just, and then we come back to Miami and I play in front of like 100. You know, it's
Yep.
pretty bizarre. But but like I was saying, I think that's the one song I think I can do justice to with Robin Zander because he doesn't really go too crazy on it, but his voice is so beautiful on it, and I can even play that song on acoustic. So I
I
definitely want to record that one day.
I would love to have you do a metal version of Reach Out with like double drums, like you know what I mean? That would be
It
killer.
would be great except for the vocals. you know,
Oh, stop it!
I don't
You'd be
think I can
fine.
do it. I mean, that's too hard. Robin Zander to me is the greatest singer ever.
Right. Well,
There's no
I'll do
better singer than him.
background screams for you. So there you
Okay,
go.
let's get
You're,
somebody else to do it, and then we just say it's me.
okay. Three songs that Cheap Trick have not played live that you know of that you want them to play.
Oh, that's a great question, Ken. Let me think. Let me think. Because God, I've seen just about all my favorites live. Um, hmm. All right, this is gonna sound bizarre because it's not a very love song. I love On the Radio. I've never seen them play live,
Mm.
and I heard a live version of it that's way better than the studio version, and I love the studio version. Um, ooh, I would have said "World's Greatest Lover" because that's the only song they didn't play on the All Shook Up tour, but then they did it on the '96 tour. It has to be something later. All right, the one that I had the argument over everybody on, the one that was universally hated by you all. You Drive, I Steer.
Ah, there you
I'd
go.
love to see them do that live. And you said 5?
No, 3.
Okay, 3. One more. Oh,
Yeah, pick.
take me. I'm yours. Jeez, I'd like to throw. I'll replace You Drive, I Steer with Such a Good Girl.
Ooh, what a
Yes.
great song.
Such a Good Girl, and yeah, and Take Me, I'm Yours, and the first one I said.
You gotta love Good Girls.
Love that song. It's so good. Such
Yep,
power, power pop perfection.
absolutely. Great track. Um, your 3, if if you were going on a drive today, your 3 Cheap Trick albums that you'd take with you.
Um, Today, because it will change tomorrow.
Right, it always
Today,
does.
Heaven Tonight, I
Hmm.
definitely have to take for me. Um, all right, just for you, Ken, I'm going to spoil a future review. Rockford would be, just to mix it up. I want to put something later. I would say 97 is too predictable, but and All Shook Up.
Hmm. Very
Those,
good.
those
If you were to have dinner with one member of Cheap Trick, past and present, who would it be?
Robin Zander.
Robin Zander. Why not Rick?
No, well, it's not, because Robin Zander. I
There you
love
go.
Rick. Rick would be probably my second choice. Well, Tom is so nice. Tom, when I met him, he was like so nice.
Hmm.
But Bunny wasn't that nice to me. But hey, we're not going to talk dirt. But Robin Zander, look, I am a guy that's never had stage fright in my life. I will go up to anybody, talk to anybody. I've been up to, Ozzy, Ryan James Dio,
You even met me.
and I met you. You saw how I was, normal.
Yep.
I mean, a little and all, but I knew how to contain it.
Right.
But Robin Zander made me nervous. He's the only person, so I like to have dinner with him so I can get over my nervousness. And I
There you
love him
go.
so much, and I have so much I would like to tell him. Not only, gush over his fans, but, Robin, what's your thought? What was your thought process on High Roller? And certain things that he's done, I just love the guy so much.
Absolutely. Now, you might be able to help other Cheap Trick fans out with this, but if you had one album that you could hand somebody at work and say, look, you've never listened to them, you need to listen to this, what album would it be?
I think, as far as the classics go and the most successful, I think, because it did actually, this album did get my original guitar player really into Cheap Trick, and that was Heaven Tonight.
Mm.
I think that one is, it does have that gateway appeal to it to me.
Mhm.
It's just so good. It's so the top of the world. I mean, when you hear that, it's just so good.
Yeah.
Just love it.
I know for a lot of people, Budokan is the answer to that.
I got a question for you, a lightning
Sure.
round question.
All right.
Budokan, at Live at Budokan versus the complete concert. Which one do you prefer?
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough because there's nothing like your first love, right?
Right.
And there's something about that first album, the way that it is. I don't want it changed. But I love having this different thing. So seriously, at Budokan by itself, but I love being able to dive deep into the complete concert.
Oh, me and you share the same. I do prefer the original Budokan, but I
Mhm.
love having, especially the one that has all 3 concerts. I love having all that, with the DVD and all that. But
Yeah.
there's just something so magical about that first album, the original one. They kind of left the heavy ones off it,
Mhm.
other than like Big Eyes maybe. But and Clock Strike 10 smokes on that album. But there's
Yeah.
just something so magical about that edited version,
Mhm.
So and it is I guess a timeline thing because Ian prefers the complete concert because he wasn't there, he wasn't there during when it was bigger than Transistors.
Yeah. I remember when that album came out, we were living by the lake, and there was a lake resort right beside us. And I would literally wake people up in the morning. I'd go out and play like Cat Scratch Fever on the guitar, and I'd play a bunch of stuff. And then usually I would just put a Budokan on and they would all have to listen to the album because the people that owned the lake resort bought the land behind us and they put it right up against our back fence. So literally my upper deck looked right out over the campers. So I would just get mad sometimes because they'd keep us up all night, that I would wake them up in the morning with Cheap Trick Live at Budokan.
Wow, nice. Awesome.
Yeah, it's nothing like it echoing off a big fence, and it sounds like a live concert going on. It was great times.
Look out.
I sometimes I pick a favorite Cheap Trick song, and I think that song is "Come On, Come On."
That's
Like
your
every
favorite one?
once, well, it changes, right? Mileage will vary, and each day brings a different thing. But like, that's just such a great song. I mean, if you've ever been in a relationship and it's like, come on, don't do this tonight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's keep it good.
Play that, and the harmony comes right back.
Exactly. But
Beautiful song.
yeah. So we wanted to encourage people who listen to Cheap Talk to check out Cheap Trick Tube. And anybody that's listening or watching Cheap Trick Tube, check out the Cheap Talk podcast. We have years worth of stuff, and you're working on years worth of stuff as well.
Yep.
It's a pretty cool time to be a Cheap Trick fan as far as information, and it's
Set list and length of concerts. Nothing against Bunny, but boy, you get more bang for your buck if you see them live now.
Yeah, unless they're opening.
With the addition of Robin's son. Have you seen him recently?
No, I have not.
Robin's son is now a part of the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, he's got a fucking amazing voice. Oh, my first time saying fucking.
Well,
I've been trying. I've been good, Ken, but I am Dr. Fuck after all.
That's right. You are Dr. Fuck after all.
But he did like the Magical Mystery Tour, that section.
Mm-hmm.
Beautifully sung. And he played the guitar. He's not up front, he's more in the back, but at least they have him up on stage.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a beautiful addition.
What do you say to somebody who's like such a fan that they can't wrap their head around Dax and now Robin Zander Taylor being in Cheap Trick, that it's kind of like bun or die? What do you say to something like that?
They are the purest, and I'm guilty of that with some bands. Not Kiss, by the way. I love Ace. Ace is my favorite, but I'm fine. I don't like the guy in Ace makeup. But when it comes to Cheap Trick, look, Bunny has health issues. He can't play more than 75 minutes. He just can't tour no more. So it's kind of a situation where it can't be helped. So
well, even if not, they must have bumped heads at some point, right? Like there comes a reason where people just don't want to work together. And to me, it's like telling a husband and wife that got a divorce that they have to stay together. You know what I mean? Fuck that.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. And it wasn't. There was no harmony there. There was a lot of bad blood going on. But you know what? Look, everybody out there that's against this whole thing, just keep this in mind. Bunny's being paid every time they play a show.
That's right.
He's still a member.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what you feel, but I really like the last two albums.
I really like Dax. He's a good guy, and I got nothing bad to say about Dax.
Solid drummer, and he does
solid
Bunny
drummer.
Does
Yeah.
Bunny justice,
Absolutely.
And, wait till you see them again, Ken. You're going to be very impressed by Xander's son.
I believe so. Well, we want to encourage everybody to keep cheap tricking and check out Cheap Trick Tube and check out Cheap Talk, the podcast. It's years of cheap trick discussion and love. Can't get much better. Ralph, I'd like to thank you for coming on this show today.
It's my honor because I'm a huge fan of yours, Ken. You know that you're a big inspiration to me starting podcasts and bringing my other podcasts back.
So it's all my fault.
Yes, everybody else. It's all your fault that I get to continue my glorious ride into the podcast world.
It's all my fault, but it's all your vault. See what I did there? Ralph Vieira's vault.
It's all your fault, but you made me find all the parts.
That's right. There you go. And when I found you, Ralph, it was like finding all the parts all over again.
Yeah, I heard angels over my head.
Hot. So we will see you on the next episode of Cheap Talk, and we will see you on the next episode of Cheap Trick Tube.
Awesome.
We will
Can
see
I
you.
do the final words, Ken?
Sure.
Suicide! 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 Thank you.
At a rib cook-off near you.
All right. Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen. Good night now, ladies and gentlemen.
Bye-bye.